Ah, welcome back to the laboratory, dear friends. Tonight, a ghost story. On the afternoon of January 15th, 1990, the American telephone network, the largest machine human beings had ever built, began switching itself off. No storm, no sabotage, no teenager in a basement. By evening, tens of millions of calls had died in the wires, and the culprit was one line of code. It had been sleeping inside the network for 3 weeks, waiting patiently for a single unlucky hiccup in Manhattan. I am the magnanimous Dr. Warthan, and this is the Broken Machine Society. Case file number 1: The Day the Phones Died. If you enjoy tales of magnificent catastrophe, do tap that like button. Gently. It's load bearing. Now, to appreciate a catastrophe properly, one must first admire the victim. In 1990, there was no internet to speak of. If you wanted to reach another human being far away, your voice traveled through AT&T's long-distance network, a cathedral of engineering. 114 switching centers spread across the country, carrying over 100 million calls every single day. It was, quite possibly, the most reliable machine on Earth. AT&T promised the network would essentially never go down, and for decades, it didn't. Speaking of communications, I am told it is time for a brief word from tonight's sponsor.
I have no sponsor.
Perhaps someday. Now, where were we? Ah, yes. What is a switch, you ask? Picture a post office clerk, an enormously fast, tireless clerk. Your call arrives, and the clerk finds it a path through Chicago, through Denver, to your grandmother in Sacramento. 114 clerks, all working together, all trained, and remember this part, it matters later, all trained from exactly the same manual. In December of 1989, AT&T gave every clerk a small update to that manual. An improvement, mind you, a way to announce things to each other a little faster. It was tested, it was deployed, and for 3 weeks, all was well. Then, at about 2:25 in the afternoon on January 15th, a switch in Manhattan noticed something wrong with itself. This was routine. The network was built for this. The switch did exactly what a well-mannered switch should do. It stepped out of service, tidied itself up, rebooted, and sent its neighbors a cheerful little message. "I'm back!" And that message killed them. Here is the flaw, dear friends, and I promise you can understand it. When a clerk received that "I'm back" message, he wrote it down. But if a second message arrived while his pen was still moving, a message arriving within 1/100th of 1 second, the faulty new manual told him to write the new note directly on top of the old one. Same square of the page. The result? Gibberish. And the clerk's own rule book was very clear about gibberish. If your handwriting turns to nonsense, you may be unwell. Step out of service. Tidy up. Reboot and announce your return. "I'm back." Do you see it? Do you see the shape of the monster? Every recovering switch poisoned its neighbors with the very greeting that announced its recovery. The sickness was the get well card. Around and around it went, a wave of resets rolling through the network every 6 seconds, coast to coast, for 9 straight hours. Now, let me take you somewhere the public never sees. Bedminster, New Jersey. AT&T's Network Operations Center. A room the size of a theater, with a wall of glowing screens 2 stories tall. The pride of the empire. On an ordinary day, that wall shows the entire American network humming along, a constellation of calm green lights. On January 15th, the wall turned red. And understand, the engineers in that room did everything right. They isolated switches. They rerouted traffic around the sickness. But you cannot route around a disease when the cure is the disease. Every switch they nursed back to health woke up, said hello, and infected its neighbors all over again. Imagine being the finest network engineers on the planet, watching your masterpiece devour itself, hunting a monster you could not see, could not name, and could not catch, because the monster was traveling inside the medicine. And out in the country, the strangest morning in telephone history was underway. Airlines watched half their reservation calls simply vanish. Every toll-free line in America, the 1-800 numbers the whole country ordered, booked, and begged on, rang to nothing because toll-free calls rode the long-distance network too. Grandmothers dialed their grandchildren and heard nothing but that cold, polite recording. All circuits are busy. Please try again later. And the truly eerie part? Local calls worked fine. You could ring your neighbor across the street. You simply could not reach the next state over. America was still lit, but it had been cut into islands. Half the long-distance calls in America, dead. Airlines watched reservations evaporate. Businesses simply stopped. AT&T lost tens of millions of dollars in a single afternoon. And in the war room, for a few dark hours, they whispered the word hackers. Oh, how they wanted it to be hackers. But the intruder was already inside, wearing their own uniform. And here, dear friends, the story grows a shadow. Because America in 1990 was terrified of phone hackers. The newspapers were full of them, teenagers with modems who could supposedly crash anything with a keystroke. So when the mightiest network on Earth fell over in a single afternoon, well, what else could it be? Within months, federal agents were kicking in doors across the country in a great hacker crackdown. Computers seized, bulletin boards dragged into evidence rooms, young men in handcuffs on the evening news. Now, those raids had many causes, and that is a case file for another evening. But the great crash of January poured gasoline on the panic. A nation became convinced that shadowy geniuses were at war with the phone company, while the true culprit sat quietly in a filing cabinet in New Jersey, written in the company's own hand. Fear, you see, is also a cascade, and it spreads through people even faster than it spreads through switches. The engineers stabilized the patient that night the only way they could. They turned down the network's chatter and rolled every switch back to the old December manual. Weeks later, they found it. Buried in the update, one misplaced instruction, a single break statement in the wrong spot in one paragraph of one page of the manual. That's all it ever was. So what happened next? Well, AT&T did something quietly heroic. They told the truth. No hacker, no sabotage, our own code, our own mistake. And then the entire industry changed how it behaves. You see, before 1990, you pushed an update everywhere at once, and you trusted your testing. After 1990, you roll it out slowly. A few switches today, a city tomorrow. Watch, wait, and keep one hand on the old manual at all times. Engineers call this a staged rollout, and it is now how every serious system on Earth ships its software. Your phone, your bank, the very app you are watching me on right now. All of them deploy carefully, piece by piece, because of one Monday in January back in 1990. The scar became the lesson, and the lesson became the law. And here is tonight's lesson, so listen closely. The network did not collapse in spite of every switch being identical. It collapsed because every switch was identical. 114 clerks, one manual, one typo. Redundancy, dear friends, is not the same as diversity. And the machine? The machine was never broken. The machine did precisely what it was told. Machines always do. That is what makes them wonderful, and that is what makes them terrifying. Case closed. Next time, before the Society, the day 45 million pagers went silent because one satellite, 22,000 miles above Kansas, quietly lost its mind. Stay curious, file your paperwork, and do check it for typos. The Society is adjourned.